Act 1. The Sunset Flight. The vast, rugged coastline of southern Australia is a place of breathtaking beauty and, at times, stark isolation. Where the mainland meets the often turbulent waters of the Bass Strait, the sky stretches wide, a canvas for spectacular sunsets and, occasionally, unsettling mysteries. On the evening of October 21st, 1978, a young pilot named Frederick Valentich took off into that expansive sky for what should have been a routine flight. Instead, he flew straight into one of the most famous and enduring UFO encounters in aviation history, ending his short flight, and possibly his life, with a chilling radio transmission that described an impossible object playing games in the twilight sky. Frederick Valentich was just 20 years old, a young man with a passion for flying, but a somewhat checkered track record. He had about 150 total hours of flying time and held a Class 4 instrument rating, which authorized him to fly visually, but not solely by instruments in cloudy or low-visibility conditions. He had applied twice to join the Royal Australian Air Force, RAF, but was rejected due to inadequate educational qualifications. He was a member of the Air Training Corps, but was determined to pursue a career in aviation. Friends described him as an earnest young man, sometimes prone to exaggeration, and deeply interested in the subject of UFOs. This last detail would become a focal point of skepticism after his disappearance. On that Saturday evening, Valentich rented a single-engine Cessna 182L light aircraft from the Moorabbin Airport near Melbourne. His stated plan was to fly across the Bass Strait to King Island, a small island roughly halfway between the Australian mainland and Tasmania. His official reason for the flight was to pick up some friends and possibly some crayfish, although later investigation revealed he hadn't actually made arrangements with anyone on King Island. The true purpose of his solo flight remains somewhat unclear. He took off at 6:19 p.m. The weather conditions were excellent. Clear skies, good visibility, and only a light wind. It was perfect flying weather. He filed a flight plan estimating his arrival at King Island around 7:28 p.m. As he flew southwest over the Australian coast and then out over the Bass Strait, the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The flight appeared entirely normal. Valentich maintained routine radio contact, his voice calm and professional. At 7 p.m., he reported passing over Cape Otway, a lighthouse marking the point where the mainland juts out closest to King Island. He was now over the open water of the Bass Strait, the vast, dark ocean stretching out below him. He confirmed his altitude at 4,500 feet and estimated his arrival at King Island in about 20 minutes. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. But just 6 minutes later, at 7:06 p.m., Valentich keyed his microphone again. This time, his voice held a note of confusion, perhaps even unease. He was about to report something impossible. Act 2. It's not an aircraft. The radio exchange that followed between Frederick Valentich and the Melbourne Flight Service Unit, specifically with operator Steve Roby, would become legendary in the annals of UFO investigations. It lasted just over 6 minutes, a fragmented, increasingly panicked conversation describing an encounter with an object that defied all known explanations. Valentich, 7:06 and 14 seconds p.m. Melbourne. This is Delta Sierra Juliet, his aircraft call sign. Is there any known traffic below 5,000 feet? Roby, Delta Sierra Juliet, no known traffic. Valentich, Delta Sierra Juliet, IM, seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000. Roby confirmed again that there were no civilian or military aircraft scheduled to be in that area at that altitude. Valentich then described the object further. Valentich, 7:06 and 46 seconds p.m. Delta Sierra Juliet. What I'm doing is orbiting, and the thing is just orbiting on top of me also. It's got a green light and sort of metallic, like it's all shiny on the outside. He confirmed he couldn't identify the type of aircraft. Roby asked him to confirm his altitude. Valentich reported he was at 4,500 feet. Valentich, 7:07 and 32 seconds p.m. Delta Sierra Juliet. It seems like it's stationary. What I'm doing right now is orbiting, and the thing is just orbiting on top of me. Also, it has a green light and sort of metallic, like it's all shiny on the outside. The object then seemed to move. Valentich, 7:08 and 18 seconds p.m. Delta Sierra Juliet. It seems to me that he's playing some sort of game. He's flying over me 2-3 times at speeds I could not identify. Roby, trying to understand, asked Valentich to describe the object's shape. Valentich, 7:08 and 49 seconds p.m. Delta Sierra Juliet. It seems like it's a long shape, cannot identify more than that it has such speed. It is before me right now, Melbourne. The situation escalated quickly. Valentich reported the object approaching him from the east. Then, it seemed to disappear, only to reappear moments later in a different position. Valentich, 7:09 and 28 seconds p.m. Delta Sierra Juliet. It seems like it's hovering, and it's not an aircraft. This was the most direct and startling statement Valentich made. Whatever he was seeing, he was now convinced it was not a conventional plane or helicopter. The object then seemed to vanish again. Valentich, 7:10 and 7 seconds p.m. Delta Sierra Juliet. It's not an aircraft, it is. Flying sequence unclear. Roby. Delta Sierra Juliet? Valentich, 7:10 and 20 seconds p.m. Delta Sierra Juliet. The object is hovering right in front of me. His voice was becoming increasingly strained. He reported problems with his own aircraft. Valentich, 7:10 and 43 seconds p.m. Delta Sierra Juliet. My engine is rough idling. I got it set at 2324 and the thing is coughing. He reiterated the object was hovering above him. Then came the final, chilling transmission. Valentich, 7:12 and 11 seconds p.m. Delta Sierra Juliet. Melbourne? That strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. Open microphone for 2 seconds. It is hovering, and it's not an aircraft. Roby. Delta Sierra Juliet? Following Valentich's last words, the microphone remained open for approximately 17 seconds. But instead of a human voice, all that could be heard was a strange, unidentified noise. It was described by investigators as metallic, scraping sounds, harsh and grating. After 17 seconds of this noise, the transmission abruptly cut out. Steve Roby tried repeatedly to re-establish contact. Delta Sierra Juliet, do you read? Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne. There was only silence. Frederick Valentich and his Cessna 182L had vanished from the radio waves, leaving behind a terrifying, inexplicable final message. Act 3. The Search in the Strait. The sudden, complete silence from Delta Sierra Juliet triggered an immediate alert. Melbourne Flight Service notified search and rescue authorities. The presumed scenario was a potential mid-air collision or, more likely given Valentich's report of engine trouble, that his plane had crashed into the base strait. An extensive air and sea search was launched that same night and continued for the next 4 days. Aircraft from the Royal Australian Air Force, RAF, along with civilian planes and boats, scoured the waters between Cape Otway and King Island. The search area was vast, the waters notoriously treacherous. They were looking for any sign, wreckage, an oil slick, a life vest, anything that could indicate the fate of the young pilot and his plane. They found nothing. Absolutely nothing. The weather conditions during the search were generally good, which made the complete lack of any debris even more baffling. A Cessna 182L, while small, contains numerous components that should float, including fuel tanks, tires, and seats. A crash into the ocean, even a catastrophic one, would almost certainly leave some form of traceable debris field or oil slick, especially given the relatively short time between the last transmission and the start of the search. But the base Strait yielded no clues. It was as if the plane and its pilot had simply ceased to exist the moment the radio went silent. The official investigation conducted by the Australian Department of Transport focused primarily on finding a rational explanation for the radio transmission and the subsequent disappearance. They meticulously reviewed the recordings, interviewed Steve Roby and other personnel, checked radar logs, which showed no other aircraft in the vicinity, and examined Valentich's background and flight records. Their final report, released years later, concluded that the reason for the disappearance could not be determined. They stated that the incident was fatal, presumed. They acknowledged the radio transmission describing the UFO but could offer no definitive explanation for what Valentich might have seen. The report speculated on several possibilities. Pilot disorientation. Valentich, relatively inexperienced, might have suffered from spatial disorientation after sunset over the featureless water. This could have caused him to fly the plane into the water without realizing it, a common type of pilot error known as a graveyard spiral. In this state, he might have misinterpreted lights from his own aircraft reflecting off the water, or even lights from distant boats or celestial bodies, as a UFO. Hoax. Given Valentich's known interest in UFOs, some investigators considered the possibility that he had staged his own disappearance, perhaps faking the radio transmission before flying off to start a new life. However, there was no evidence to support this, and it seemed unlikely given his known personal circumstances. Real UFO encounter. The report did not explicitly endorse this possibility but could not rule it out entirely, given the lack of any alternative explanation and the compelling nature of Valentich's terrified account. The mysterious 17 seconds of metallic, scraping noise at the end of the transmission remained particularly baffling. Was it the sound of the aircraft breaking apart? Was it interference from the alleged UFO? Or just meaningless static? Experts could not agree. The disappearance of Frederick Valentich became a sensation, both in Australia and internationally. It was seized upon by UFO researchers as one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for extraterrestrial visitation ever recorded. Here was a pilot in communication with air traffic control, describing an encounter with an unconventional craft in real time, immediately before vanishing forever. It was the perfect mystery. Act 4. Lights in the sky and explanations on the ground. While the official investigation struggled to find answers, the public, fueled by media attention and the burgeoning UFO phenomenon, offered plenty of their own theories and supposed evidence. Immediately following Valentich's disappearance, reports began to surface of unusual lights seen in the sky over the base Strait region around the same time as his flight. Several ground observers, independent of each other, claimed to have witnessed fast-moving green lights in the sky that night. Some even took photographs. One amateur photographer, Roy Manifold, took a series of sunset photos at Cape Otway just minutes before Valentich reported his encounter. When developed, one of the photos appeared to show a strange, dark object seemingly rising out of the water, with a cloud of vapor or exhaust above it. While initially compelling, subsequent analysis suggested the anomaly was likely just an out-of-focus object close to the camera lens or a developing flaw. None of the reported sightings or photographs could be definitively linked to Valentich's experience or proven to be extraterrestrial. Skeptics offered more mundane explanations for what Valentich might have seen. One theory proposed that he was seeing the lights of nearby islands, or even bright celestial bodies like Venus, Mars, or Jupiter, which were visible in the sky that night. Perhaps combined with disorientation, These could have been misinterpreted as a moving aircraft. Another possibility was that he encountered a military drone or experimental aircraft, although the authorities denied any such activity in the area. A particularly intriguing, yet somewhat complex, explanation involves pilot disorientation, leading to an illusion. If Valentich had inadvertently put his plane into a slow, descending spiral, the graveyard spiral, the lights of his own aircraft reflecting off the smooth surface of the water below could have appeared as another object maneuvering around him. His perception of the object hovering on top of him might have been due to looking down at the reflection while inverted or severely banked. His report of engine trouble could also be consistent with the unusual attitudes and power settings associated with such a spiral. This theory provides a plausible, purely physiological explanation for his perception of the event, culminating in a crash into the water. However, none of these explanations fully account for all the details in the transmission. Valentich described the object as long, metallic, and moving at incredible speed, descriptions that don't easily fit planets or reflections. And then there's the final 17 seconds of scraping noise. The UFO proponents argue that these details point directly to an encounter with an extraterrestrial craft. They suggest the metallic scraping noise was the sound of Valentich's small Cessna being interfered with, damaged, or even captured by the UFO. Perhaps the craft's propulsion system disrupted his engine and electronics. Perhaps it physically collided with or magnetically lifted the plane. In this scenario, Valentich wasn't disoriented. He was accurately describing a terrifying, otherworldly encounter in his final moments. Adding fuel to the UFO theory was Valentich's known interest in the subject. Skeptics argued that his fascination with UFOs made him predisposed to interpret any unusual sighting as extraterrestrial. They suggested he might have even embellished his account, caught up in the excitement of a potential encounter. Conversely, supporters argued that his interest in the topic actually made him a more credible witness, someone familiar with different types of aircraft who would be less likely to misidentify a conventional object. The debate continues to this day. Was Frederick Valentich a victim of his own inexperience and disorientation? Did he misinterpret natural phenomena? Or was he truly one of the few humans to have a close encounter of the fatal kind, silenced forever after witnessing something not of this earth? Act 5. An echo across the Strait. More than 4 decades have passed since Frederick Valentich and his Cessna vanished over the Bay Strait. No wreckage has ever been found. No definitive explanation has ever been agreed upon. The case remains officially unsolved, a haunting enigma suspended between rational explanation and otherworldly possibility. For Valentich's family, the lack of closure has been an enduring source of pain. They have had to live with the uncertainty, the endless speculation, and the sometimes sensational media coverage surrounding Frederick's fate. They maintain that he was a competent pilot who encountered something truly inexplicable that night. The Valentich disappearance has become a cornerstone of Australian UFO folklore and a classic case study in ufology worldwide. It stands out because of the real-time audio recording of the encounter captured through official channels. Unlike many anecdotal UFO reports, Valentich's panicked conversation with air traffic control provides a chilling, seemingly objective record of his terrifying experience. The case highlights the profound difficulties in investigating events that push the boundaries of our known reality. When faced with phenomena that don't fit established patterns, how do we separate fact from misperception, reality from illusion, or even hoax from genuine encounter? The Valentich case offers no easy answers. Skeptics continue to favor explanations rooted in pilot error and disorientation, emphasizing Valentich's relative inexperience and the known challenges of flying over water at sunset. They argue that the desire to believe in UFOs often leads people to overlook more probable, albeit less exciting, explanations. Believers, however, point to the specifics of Valentich's description: the speed, the metallic appearance, the hovering, and the complete lack of wreckage as evidence that something truly anomalous occurred. They see the official investigation's inability to provide a definitive natural explanation as tacit support for the UFO hypothesis. Perhaps the most haunting element remains the final 17 seconds of transmission, the bizarre, metallic, scraping sounds. It is an audio Rorschach test, a meaningless jumble of static onto which countless interpretations can be projected. Is it the sound of metal tearing as a plane breaks apart? The sound of radio interference from an unknown source? Or something else entirely? It is the final, unreadable punctuation mark at the end of Frederick Valentich's last message. Ultimately, the story of Frederick Valentich is a ghost story for the technological age. It's the tale of a young man who flew off into the sunset and encountered something inexplicable in the vast, empty sky. His final words, broadcast across the strait, became an echo, a fragment of a mystery captured in static, forever replaying the question, what was out there with him? The answer, like Valentich himself, seems to have vanished into thin air.